Good afternoon and welcome back to the afternoon session of the Budget Committee on March 10th, 2021, where we are going over the Halifax Transit budget and business plan for 2021. Most of the councillors have gone through their first round of questions, so we are continuing with Councillor Kent for your second round of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this will be directed directly to you, Dave, as far as, and we may have others to chime in on it. It's really an area of concern that I have with Route 6A, 6B, 6C, and the reduction in service that this is creating. I'm okay with some subtle changes, but I have serious concerns. I'd like to understand what you considered to be the change. It says a reduce of service on Cow Bay, Caldwell, and Shore Road. So I'd like to have a better understanding of what that means. But the other bigger picture for me is the Woodside Loop off of Pleasant up over Irving, Franklin, and Everett Street. It took, actually, I was on council when we were able to achieve getting that loop, and I am concerned about seeing that change. That particular area, being South Woodside, is underserved in so many ways. It's planked smack dab in the middle of that whole industrial environment down in that part of District 3 at the end of the circumferential highway. To be frank, the residents in that area, they don't look outside of their area for a lot of help and support or changes. But I think on a municipal level, I think that for the little bit of coverage that the municipality is offering, huge impact to that small community, but the very small amount that really is coming out, I really need to understand the benefit. I really don't. I will want to see dollars and cents on this one. Rationale. I will want a briefing note on this. I will want, in particular, a dollars and cents, because I may want to put that in the parking lot for additions. I guess based on the conversation that we've had so far around is it or isn't appropriate ask to have this kind of dive into the weeds, appropriate or not. I guess we could first answer the question that was suggested by Councillor Mason, that all of these changes were on the table for council back whenever. Did you get down to that? Did you drill down to that degree? And if not, then I want to put it on the table as being an area that I may want to say we really need to keep this. I'm going to stay in this area for this series of questions. So I'm looking for comments on that. I'm looking for whether or not you can give me what it would cost to keep it, what the impact would be on that particular route, and then a better understanding of what exactly are you talking about when you say a decrease in service for Cow Bay, Caldwell, and Shore Road. That was the original transit corridor that we have had in Eastern Passage, the 60, for many, many years. The addition of the Heritage Hills, I'm really excited to hear that there will be improvements to it. That, in fact, that addition was under my watch as well, back in between 2004 and 7 when I was on council before. But I am concerned about the decrease. Anytime areas lose service, it's disconcerting. The impact on District 3 is very, very real overall, the big arching piece, and I really have concerns about these two changes.
Sure. Thanks for your questions, Councillor. Through the chair. So I'm going to start, and I may get Patricia to jump in as well on some of the more detailed questions around the service plan there. I think to one of your first questions about, like, did this conversation get into the weeds? I think it certainly did. When we had the approval of the Moving Forward Together plan, I know there were certainly lots of conversations with councillors at the time, both as part of the plan process, but also as part of the plan approval, down to the root level. So certainly that was all that would have been fair game, as the plan was approved through council. And as I think Councillor Cleary mentioned earlier, there were certainly multiple supplemental reports that dived into routes specific issues. So that conversation, certainly did happen. In terms of the South Woodside area, like Everett Street, that area, when we look at that, the majority of residents there, would be within walking distance of the route on Pleasant Street, which is now the 6th. So this is one of those areas when we look at, trying to take resources that are out there and reinvest them back into the network. So when we look at the current Route 60, or what would be the new Route 6, by far the busiest area is between the Bridge Terminal and the Woodside Ferry Terminal. So this is about creating that sort of, higher frequency corridor there, and then allocating resources throughout the rest of the route. So in terms of the question about the reduction of service further out on the Shore Road, so basically what we're doing, this is where I'll ask Patricia to correct me if I'm off base on this. My understanding is, during off-peak hours, we'd be taking some resources from the Shore Road loop and using them to put all-day service on the Heritage Hills portion of the route. So taking some from the 6B to allow the 6C to operate all day long. And as I see Patricia has joined, so maybe she can jump in here.
Sure. Patricia Hughes, Manager of Planning and Customer Engagement. Dave's correct. So what happens now, Heritage Hills, like the councillor mentioned, was a later addition to this route. So they've only ever had peak service. And when we looked at the two communities and the two ways that route can branch, there's really no reason why those communities don't have equal service. So it's continuing that pattern of every other trip going to Heritage Hills. But through the middle of the day and the evening and the weekends when they don't have service now. So because every other trip goes to Heritage Hills, that means you are taking every other trip away from the Shore Road portion and balancing out the service. So it was a bit of, I would say, just kind of balancing the service in that regard, so that the two communities had equal service.
So Shore Road, Caldwell will have all-day service, but just not as frequent? Am I right? Or every other day, one's getting, I'm still a little confused. I guess I can take this offline to get a better understanding of it. So I'm really, I don't know, I don't feel like I really got my answer on Irving, Everett, and Franklin. What are your thoughts on what would the impact be if there was a request from me to reinstate it?
So I think that would be a budgetary item through the chair. That would become a budgetary item. So I think that would need to go the route of a briefing note to the parking lot.
Okay, well, I'd like to put that motion on the floor then for a briefing note.
Okay,
please.
So this is a briefing note for the
reinstatement of the South Woodside, Irving, Everett, and Franklin Street coverage service.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that briefing note? We will have the text of that. Becky, can you work with the clerk to make sure that text is there? I saw Councillor Hensby waving.
I'll second that.
You're seconding that. Okay. Are there any comments, if there are any comments on the briefing note for the restoration of that service that Councillor Kent is talking about? And if you could just at least post the street names into the chat, I'd appreciate it. Then we could proceed with questions or comments on that motion. And I see Councillor Kent typing away. I'm not looking to wordsmith, I'm looking to just get the general basis of the motion at this point. Okay. So the motion that has just been put into the chat is that Councillor Kent has moved that staff provide a briefing note on the reinstatement of service to Everett Street, Irving Street, and Franklin Street to offer rationale, cost, and impact on other routes. That is the motion on the floor. If there are any comments on that, please indicate that in the chat.
Question?
Seeing no comments and having the question been called, over to the clerk for moving through the roll.
Beginning with District 6, Councillor Mancini. 7, Councillor Mason.
For the briefing note.
8, Councillor Smith. 9, Councillor Cleary.
Sure.
10, Councillor Morse.
Yes.
11, Councillor Cuttle.
For the motion?
12, Councillor Stoddard.
For the motion?
13, Councillor Lovelace.
Voting yes.
14, Councillor Blackburn.
Voting in favor of the motion.
15, Chair Russell.
In favor?
16, Deputy Mayor Oathead.
Yes.
1, Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Voting in favor of the motion?
2, Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
3, Councillor Kent.
In favor?
4, Councillor Purdy.
Voting in favor.
5, Councillor Austin.
In favor.
Mayor Savage.
I will vote for the briefing notes.
Okay. Thank you. That motion passes. Councillor Kent, your time is a little bit up, so let's move on to Councillor Cuttle. If you would like to come back, please indicate that in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Cuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so getting back to that discussion we were having on the on Kathy's motion there about the 415. There was a scheduling change made in November where you added an earlier route and ended a later route. I've been getting a lot of correspondence from people out this way about cutting that last bus. So now the last bus out on the 415 is 445, which many people say doesn't work if they're coming home from work and need to make a stop, or if they're coming from university. So all those, you know, the university students out this way who were relying on that bus are saying, you know, it doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for people who have jobs that end at 6 o'clock. When I asked about this, I was told that there was a lot of consultation, but I haven't seen the consultation on that scheduling shift. And I know part of the rationale was to encourage children from the junior high to take the bus after school. I think the ask from the community was to add one more bus, not to take away the later bus in favor of the earlier bus. So I'm going to follow in the footsteps of Kathy and Becky, and I would like to request a briefing note on the consultation that was done to inform that route change, the communication strategy used to inform people of the scheduling change, and what it would cost to add an additional bus for 6:45.
So I just want to make sure that I have that in line. You want to ask about, you want a briefing note for the consultation that was done, so detailing the consultation?
Consultation, I'm going to type it out here. That was done to inform the scheduling change. Rationale and the cost for adding a later bus. Should be 6:45.
Okay, briefing note on the consultation that was done to inform the scheduling change and the rationale and the cost for adding back the later bus, and that would be on Route 415.
On Route 415, and in relation to that same route, I'm also wondering why is it classified as a rural service? I see in the list in the report here that there's three.
Councillor Cuddle, if I can interrupt for a second, do we have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
That was Councillor Kent. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Cuddle.
Councillor Kent, and in relation to that route as well, I'm just wondering if you could explain now why it's classified as a rural route. The other two rural routes are Porter's Lake and Tantallon, both of which are, you know, significantly further from the city than Purcell's Cove, and that you know, when I look at the transit service map, the Purcell's Cove route is surrounded by transit service boundary. It's very much suburban. The only place in any HRM documents that call Purcell's Cove rural are the transit strategies. So I'm just wondering what are the criteria for determining an area as rural, and how does Purcell's Cove fit into that rural criteria?
If I'm not mistaken, that was incorporated in the regional plan, but I would ask one of the other councillors or Mr. Traves to speak to that, or Mr. Riggi.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can take a crack at that one. So the 415 under the Moving Forward Together plan, when it was approved by council, was approved as a rural route because it is predominantly outside the urban transit service boundary, and the area that it uniquely serves, that is independent of any other route, it is primarily rural in density. So it doesn't really come back to how far outside the city it is. It is more to do with the densities at play and the service levels that would go with those under the Moving Forward Together plan.
Okay, if you could share the criteria with me on what qualifies it as a rural route, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, we can do that. I know there's some outstanding conversations staff are looking to have as well, Councillor, on this. So happy to be able to get those scheduled. And I'm sure a lot of this information we can provide through a meeting as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And also, it would be great too. I just posted in the chat there the link to the transit service boundary, and you can see how the 415 or the 15 before it leaves the service boundary once you really get past Williams Lake. If the briefing note could also include ridership data, and that's true for all of the briefing notes that have been asked for in different route changes, because I noticed no one's asked for the ridership data, but if that can be included too, just to give us a sense of the ridership. And Councillor Cuddle mentioned university students. University classes are all online this year. I know I'm teaching 2 of them. And so I'm not sure how that, you know, if you have no scheduled classes for university students, should be an issue of when you can catch a bus. But if we can include ridership data on all the briefing notes, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Riggi. Would you be able to include that ridership data?
Yes, we can certainly do that, Chair.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Councillor Lovelace.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just have a kind of a clarification, because you know what I'm seeing here is rural issues, right? Access to transit and rural issues. And when we consider, you know, why is it a rural route? Well, it's in a rural tax designated space, and it's rural tax because of density, as you pointed out, Dave. And so, you know, just trying to figure out how we can address the difference between a rural tax designation and the actual need for transit in some of these, you know, these areas that rely on transit for economic development reasons, from getting people to and from work, from, you know, these these kind of central hubs of, almost village-like communities, which, yes, they're in a rural tax boundary. But I think Councillor Cuddle and others have raised a really good point. And I think looking at that tax boundary is really where we need to go to. And I know we've got a meeting coming up in a little while to talk about that. Unfortunately, it's post budget and post business plan, so it's kind of hard to incorporate any of those changes or discussions into this particular business plan. While I understand that previous councils have made the decision to get us where we are here today, I do think that it's important that we consider ways to address the need to get transit into rural areas, even if they are in within that rural boundary of the tax designation. And so, I think what we need to do is think outside the box and find creative solutions to ensure we have opportunities for economic development and ways to get people to and from places of business to create more economic opportunities for our rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further speakers in the chat right now. One of the things that we have is the urban transit service boundary, and this is something that is designated in the regional plan, where we regularly, where previous councils have regularly looked at this and adjusted it. So Councillor Blackburn and I face a similar challenge because of buses going out the Beaverbank Road and going along Lucasville, that they aren't in the urban transit service boundary, and we are looking to extend it for that. Councillor Stoddart, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few issues in District 12, and one of them I'd like to put on the floor.
Is this in relation? Is this in relation to Councillor Cuddle's motion for the briefing note?
No, I'm sorry. Is that still outstanding?
If memory serves, yes, it is.
Okay, well then I'll wait. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cuddle, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to clarify a point there to Councillor Lovelace's comments that Purcell's Cove is actually, it's not in the rural tax rate. It is, I think it would be in the suburban, if I'm correct. It's in the urban tax designated boundary. And so that's why I'm saying the only place where it's considered rural is with Halifax Transit. And that's why I'm asking for what the criteria is for determining the rural designation for the 415 when it's clearly not a rural area. And it's unique in that the density might be low, but it is, it is clearly within the city boundaries. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, and I don't see any other speakers in the chat. So again, I would like to hand it over to the clerk and run through the roll for the question on the briefing note about the Route 415.
Beginning with District 7, Councillor Mason.
For the briefing note.
8, Councillor Smith. 9, Councillor Cleary.
Sure.
10, Councillor Morse.
In favor.
11, Councillor Cuddle.
Favor.
12, Councillor Stoddart.
In favor of the motion.
13, Councillor Lovelace.
Voting yes.
14, Councillor Blackburn.
Voting yes on the motion.
15, Councillor Russell.
In favor?
16, Deputy Mayor Otis.
Yes.
1, Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Voting in favor of the motion.
2, Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
3, Councillor Kent.
In favor.
4, Councillor Purdy. Councillor Purdy.
Sorry. Voting in favor.
5, Councillor Austin.
In favor.
6, Councillor Mancini. Mayor Savage.
In favor?
So that motion passes, so we will be bringing another briefing note forward, which is fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to hand the floor to Councillor Stoddard. This is her first time speaking. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I have an issue that I'd like to put on the floor for consideration. It relates to District 12, and I'd like to move that staff provide a briefing note to improve the transit service in District 12 as it relates to the park and ride.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about any parameters around that. Is it simply to improve the service, or would you'd like to provide further direction to Mr. Rigi and Ms. Hughes on that?
Thank you. In connection with your presentation, I do thank you, Dave, and your staff. District 12 is fortunate enough to have a park and ride. However, there is no bus currently to take the residents to the location. I understand that transit is concerned about the environment, but right now you need a car to get to the parking lot. Would it be possible maybe to extend one of our buses to take the extra 15-minute addition to take the residents to the park and ride location? I realize it's only 1.5% to 2% of the ridership, but we could probably improve that and have more people leave their cars at home if they have that few minutes of access. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rigi, before you respond, can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Hensby seconds it.
I'll second that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So through the chair, just for my clarification, is this the Rural Express Park and Ride at I guess exit 4 Sheldrake Lake on Highway 103? Just so I know, just so I'm on the same boat of what we're talking about.
Yes, the one that's currently on the parking lot adjacent to the church.
Okay. So thank you. So through the chair. So at this point in time, we haven't had any council direction to do that. It wasn't part of the moving forward together plan. So it doesn't appear in the annual service plan. I mean, I guess like any request with budget implications, it could it could go into a briefing note. But I would say this isn't something that staff have looked at all or have consulted at all in the past. So this I guess it's not in our budget or business plan for those reasons.
Is it something you would consider to improve the ridership in District 12?
I don't know if I can really give an answer to that off the top of my head. It's not something we've ever had we've looked at, in terms of doing any sort of analysis or anything like that. So I wouldn't be able to just kind of provide an opinion on the spot here today, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
We have the text of Councillor Stoddard's motion pasted into the chat, and this is requesting a briefing note. Councillor Austin, are you asking for the question or are you asking to speak?
I'm asking to speak.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, I mean, there's been no planning work done for this. So, I mean, it's not really something that we could just add to the budget to stand up this year. I'm wondering if instead, whether we could instead direct this to regional council. And I mean, this to me needs a staff report, right? So that we can get Councillor Stoddard to that point of having that discussion and having an answer one way or the other from council. I mean, I think it has to be a staff report, not a briefing note that then would come forward for next budget cycle for next year, really, for us to do anything. Or I don't see how we could, stand up an entire. It's one thing to take a look at, well, maybe this bus in Eastern Passage can stay diverting around this block like it did before. But I think if we're standing up whole new services, we need something a little bit more than that outside this budget window. So I'm wondering if, to Councillor Stoddard, through you, Mr. Chair, whether or not we could somehow redirect this towards regional council and as a staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Mr. Traves has popped up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Councillor Austin raises the point. I was just on the phone with Ms. Fraser on in terms of whether or not this has got to a stage where, you know, as Councillor Austin suggests, it's a bigger issue for council to consider in the context of the moving forward together plan, right? I did talk with Mr. Rege a few minutes ago, and of course there are some budget implications that comes down to this plan, but I think with these briefing notes that the approach, and you know, notwithstanding the way they've been moved, might make sense to bring them all forward to regional council as an update, report, and recommendation. And if council then chooses to amend the moving forward together plan in the direction that's currently there, we can get that done relatively quickly and look at whether or not that can be accomplished, or if there's a desire to deal with it in this year's budget. Because it does seem like these requests are all pushing directly into that larger strategy that council approved, and pushing around that whole piece. So with that in mind, perhaps, you know, those specific areas that the councillors wish to have addressed in a briefing note / recommendation or report to council, if we could have those out today, and then I would suggest that the matter needs to have a bigger discussion at council.
And that's fair. Okay, thank you. If there is nothing further than Councillor Austin, Councillor Hensby.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a very reasonable request on behalf of the council to make this. I'm looking at the roading maps and stuff, and it's not a very far distance for either Route 21 or 123, the service of Timberley, to go a little further up the road to get to the Sheldrake terminal. So therefore, you can serve terminal to terminal from Sheldrake to Munford Road. So therefore, people who want to use conventional transit have that opportunity. Because right now, Sheldrake is only for park and ride for people who have to drive their car to the terminal to get the 330, and that's it. There's no alternative connection. So what they're proposing to do with the Route 401 is connecting the 401 to the Porter's Lake terminal. This is a similar idea of having either Route 21 or 123 extended a bit to the Sheldrake terminal. I think it's a great idea, and I applaud the councillor for suggesting it.
Can't hear you, Mr. Chair.
You're muted, Chair.
You couldn't hear me because I was muted. Yes, thank you very much. First time today. So I don't see any further speakers in the chat. So I'm wondering if you would be interested in taking this to Transportation Safety Committee, Standing Committee, or full council, or would you like to have a vote on it here?
I would like to have a vote on it here.
Fair enough. I'm going to hand it over to the clerk then to proceed through the roll for the motion that is in the chat, that the Budget Committee request a briefing note on how the park and ride service for District 12 can be improved.
Can I request quickly that the motion be read again, just to make sure that people viewing online are aware of what's being voted on?
The motion that we have and that we are voting on is that Budget Committee request a briefing note on how the park and ride service for District 12 be improved.
Thank you. Voting on that motion, beginning with District 9, Councillor Cleary.
So I think it's well outside the scope of our budget committee, so I got to vote no, sorry.
10, Councillor Morse.
In favor.
11, Councillor Cuttle.
In favor.
12, Councillor Stoddard.
In favor.
13, Councillor Lovelace.
Voting.
Sorry, was that a yes?
Yipperdoodle.
Thank you. Sorry about that. District 14, Councillor Blackburn.
Voting yes on the motion.
15, Chair Russell.
Voting yes, and also a request to have a yep or doodle button on our voting stations when we return to council.
District 16, Deputy Mayor Outhead.
As long as we have a nope-a-doodle, but I will vote yes right now.
1, Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Voting in favor of the motion.
2, Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
3, Councillor Kent.
In favor.
4, Councillor Purdy.
Yupperdoodle, voting in favor.
5, Councillor Austin.
In favor.
6, Councillor Mancini. 7, Councillor Mason.
Voting for the briefing note that will recap what the lawyer just said.
8, Councillor Smith. Mayor Savage.
Okay.
Thank you, colleagues.
Paul, you're muted.
That's twice today. So thank you very much. We have another briefing note coming forward. We are back on the main motion at this point. The only remaining speaker is Councillor Cuddle. So go ahead, Councillor.
I think, oh wait, speaking on which, oh, I'm so confused now.
This is speaking on the main motion.
Oh, I did speak on that. I think I'm done with that. That's when I brought forward my other briefing note.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. I don't see any further speakers in the. I don't see any further speakers in the chat.
Question.
Councillor Kent has requested to speak a third time, and so go ahead, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I just clarified. I don't think I put in for a third time for the main motion. This is not about that. Sorry, are we on the main motion now?
We are on the main motion. Go ahead.
Okay, then yes, I do want to speak. Sorry, I lost track. Okay, so just need some clarity from you, Dave, on Route 57, Portland Estates. So this new route, weekly local service, Portland Hills Terminal, Penhorn Terminal via Portland Estates during the peak period only, discontinuing existing service in the off-peak period. The route, so I just want to be clear, route will follow similar Route 57. So you're confident that the way this is configured, that we're getting that captured within the, actually there's probably several areas that this area is captured. I think 63, possibly 67 and 168. Am I hearing that right? That although we're discontinuing it as a Route 57 for Russell Lake, the off-peak for Portland Estates, they actually still have coverage. Am I right?
So if I understand, let me try to answer, and if I haven't answered correctly, then please point me in a different direction. Through the chair, so Route 57 currently operates between Portland Hills Terminal and Penhorn Terminal, and then continues from Penhorn to Baker Drive down to the Woodside Ferry Terminal. So the portion between Penhorn Terminal and the Woodside Ferry Terminal will now be covered by another route. I think it's Route 63. And I can speak to that in a moment, why we did that. Route 57 has extraordinarily low ridership outside of rush hour, but it does have sufficient ridership during rush hour to keep the route going. So that's why the the recommendation that was approved under the Moving Forward Together plan was for that portion of it to go to rush hour service only. Now the remainder of the route, the Baker Drive portion, which is covered by, I'm just pulling the map up now, Route 63. No, I have the wrong route number. Route number, I'm going to try to find it here. Anyway, there is another route. The number escapes me at the moment, but anyhow, that route, 67. Thank you, Patricia. So Route 67 will operate between the Woodside Ferry Terminal and Penhorn, as the old 57 did, but it will continue to Main Street, Tacoma, and Micmac Terminal, and that was in response to a lot of feedback we had primarily from a lot of the senior population on Baker Drive, that what they would really value was that more direct connection to the shopping at Micmac Terminal and the medical services up around Tacoma. So that's why that shift was made. And the 67 will continue to be all-day service, not just rush hour only. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does, and it makes me feel better that if you got confused, it doesn't surprise me that I got confused. I'm feeling quite better about that.
I've known these route numbers for so many years that it's taken me a while to remember all the new ones as well. So
I'm really particularly pleased with your answer, because to know that that you had that kind of feedback, and that is a very populated area of seniors and some families, but seniors in particular, that's servicing them. I'm really excited to hear that. So my last question is around Route 58 Woodlawn, and it's around the change to Spring Avenue. It speaks to the route has been removed from the northern portion of Spring Avenue and will instead travel the southern portion of Spring Avenue, as well as Collins Grove River Road to connect Portland Street. So so I just want to understand, instead, so it's the, why did you have to take any part of that out? I'll just answer easy.
Sure.
Easy.
So through the chair, so the former Route 58 ended in a loop through the Woodlawn neighborhood. So it went up through Belle Vista, Lucia, and Dorothea, and then it came back onto Spring and then onto Ellenvale. So what we've basically done, it's no longer a loop at that end. It now continues. So when it gets down from the corner of Dorothea and Spring, rather than going right and closing the loop, it'll now go left and proceed via Collins Grove to Portland Hills Terminal for increased connectivity there. So the portion of Spring that's losing service is probably about 150 meters long. So it's really like they can go to either side of the new route.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. So outside of that, there's lots of change. I will end my remarks with, please, and I've said this before too, on other situations where communication with the public is such a key piece, please take advantage. Certainly, I can only speak for myself, but please take advantage of the counselor connections to our communities, our districts that we serve. They will come to us before they come to you when they get confused or they miss out on information, they miss a bus because they didn't know about it. So anything that we can get, not only but not in a time frame that is the night before you post it on Facebook or whatever. Give us lots of information. Thank you. I see the chair rolling his finger at me, so I'm going to stop it there, and I think I'm done now. So thank you all for your patience.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lovelace.
Oh, sorry, I thought Councillor Cuddle was before me. Okay.
Councillor Cuddle would be speaking for a third time, and you are speaking a second time.
Look at you, Mr. Chair, all organized. Okay, really quick question on the 433. I understand that we've got some changes coming, Dave. I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve here and understand where the 433 isn't going to go. Currently, it's going down Blue Water Road. If it's going to head to the new Park and Ride, we're going to see a little bit of a delay. So just wondering whether or not we're going to lose that Blue Water Road route, or if you're going to go to the other end of Broad Street. Have you worked that out yet?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor, through the chair. So no service will be lost on Blue Water that's currently served by the 433. That'll be maintained. Basically, there'll be an addition as it comes down Hammonds Plains Road. It will go to the West Bedford Park and Ride lot and then come back and continue its existing routing along Blue Water.
Oh, okay, great. So it's just going to have to do a roundabout there. So it will actually continue to go down on Hammonds Plains Road to the new Park and Ride.
That's correct.
Any plans to increase, on Broad Street or into Brookline? Is that on your radar at all?
So the Brookline side, it's not in this year's plan, but certainly aware that's a growing area, and we'll continue looking at that. The neighborhood through Broad Street, Gary Martin, that area, it was a focus of service increases in previous years. So we do have the Route 90 there along with the 194. One thing I will say is that with the new Park and Ride opening, We're not adding new trips to the 194 yet, but what we're going to do is actually have some additional buses available, just because we do expect there'll be an increase in demand with the parking ride opening. And what this, so basically we'll have the buses available. We can use them as double headers. And once we get a sense of where the demand shifts and what time people want, then we can move those buses around to accommodate that demand.
Okay, that's great. So to get ahead of the curve, what's our ETA?
This is all for November.
November, perfect. Okay, thanks so much, Dave. And congrats, Lindell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lovelace. Councillor Cuttle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, in terms of my comment about the university student and Councillor Cleary's comment about that too. I mean, we know students aren't in classes now, but I don't think that should take the consideration of a later bus off the table, because hopefully things are going to get back to normal. And if students not going to classes right now affects this route, well, then I guess it opens up the discussion for a lot of routes within the city. So I'm just wondering, in terms of route ridership, does information exist now that we could see for all the routes in terms of pre-COVID and current ridership? And also, I think it is fantastic that we have boosted ridership over the last, 3 years. We've, saw that big increase pre-COVID, and I think that was great. And I'm just wondering, in terms of measuring like how we achieve that, where the low-income transit pass factors in. I know in an area like Spryfield, and particularly that Herring Cove route, there was an increase in ridership, and I'm just wondering how much of that gets attributed to the route changes, and how much of that gets attributed to people having these transit passes that provide them more access to take the bus, where they might have not been making that decision for financial reasons. I don't know if any analysis has been done about that, but it would be great to know, because I'm a big supporter of the low-income transit pass, and think that it would be neat to know how that contributed to our ridership numbers.
Great, thanks for those questions, Councillor. Through the chair, it's a really good question around those sources of, what is the impact of the low-income transit pass. Also, the Department of Community Services program with those passes is probably actually would be even much bigger than the low-income transit pass. And we can make some inferences in terms of what the various influences are between those and the service plan. Ultimately, it's hard to really precisely nail that down, because there are just so many factors. And in some places we've had both a service increase and more people getting low income or DCS passes. So it's certainly a combination of those factors. Hard to really nail that down. In terms of the availability of data, we do report quarterly to the Transportation Standing Committee, a quarterly KPI report. So that does include ridership information on a route by route basis every quarter. So that information is available publicly there.
Okay, thank you. I'd love a copy of the latest one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have you missed me? So I am taking a page out of Councillor Hansby's book, and I'm not missing an opportunity to speak to the need and the advocacy that I'm doing on behalf of District 3 potential riders from between Cole Harbour and Eastern Passage, and for Cow Bay. We know this is, you have heard this bit from me before, I'll say it again. I believe strongly that we are missing the boat on service in those areas. I do believe strongly as well that connecting communities is equally important as connecting to the downtown for ridership and shared services. So certainly until we have a Mount Hope connector road, we would, which might also be part of the solution here as well. We have a significant problem getting connections to some of the area in Cole Harbour, where a lot of our constituents, have doctors and shop and bank and all those things. Excuse me. And the Cow Bay Loop is another part of the district that is, as Councillor Cuttle was speaking to, is in the municipal boundaries. So yeah, they're not paying transit now, but maybe they'd be open to it. Transit fees. So I just going to leave that on the table. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any further speakers in the chat. Welcome, Councillor Smith, to the room. I appreciate it. And congratulations on the position that you won earlier with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Question.
We have a call for the question, so I'd like to hand it over to the clerk for calling the roll on the main motion.
Beginning with District 10, Councillor Morse.
Voting in favor.
11, Councillor Cuddle.
In favor?
12, Councillor Stoddard.
Voting in favor of the motion.
13, Councillor Lovelace.
Voting yes.
14, Councillor Blackburn.
In favor of the motion.
15, Chair Russell.
In favor?
16, Deputy Mayor Oathit.
In favor?
1, Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Voting in favor of the motion.
2, Councillor Hensby.
Affirmative.
3, Councillor Kent.
Voting in favor and looking forward to that briefing note on the Southwood side part.
4, Councillor Purdy.
Voting in favor.
5, Councillor Austin.
In favor.
6, Councillor Mancini. 7, Councillor Mason.
For the motion.
8, Councillor Smith.
For.
9, Councillor Cleary.
I was looking for that yupper doodle button on my computer. Yes.
Mayor Savage.
Yep.
I would suggest, Councillor Cleary, that is right next to the any key. So we have now passed the main motion, which is the Halifax Transit budget and business plan. So we have nothing left on the agenda except to adjourn. We are meeting next at the Halifax Regional Council meeting on Tuesday, March 23rd. Everybody gets a week off next week for March break, so there is no budget meeting on next week, and we won't need the meeting on this Friday. So if we could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
From Councillor Lovelace, thank you. We stand adjourned. I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you and have a great time off.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
A text.
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.